Hi, so today we're going to go on and talk about finding the 6 trig values, which is something that we're going to use your chart for or the unit circle for that you found yesterday with your ordered pairs. I want you to go back and think for a second about when you were in in geometry, where you talked about SOHCAHTOA. So that would be your first introduction to the trig values. You know that if I had so, that was the sine of the angle is equal to the opposite over the hypotenuse. CAH is the cosine of the angle is equal to the adjacent side length over the hypotenuse. And TOH, to us, right? That's an A. So that tangent of an angle is equal to the opposite side over the adjacent side. So that's the introduction to them. That would be the first 3 that you would have. But each one of these has a reciprocal property to it. So if I were to have 1 over the sine value, we call that cosecant, which is CSC, and that's the flip. So that would be the hypotenuse over the opposite side. If I took 1 over cosine, that would be secant, which is abbreviated SEC, and that's the flip of cosine, so the hypotenuse over the adjacent side. And then tangent, so 1 over tangent, would be the cotangent, which is equal to COT, which is the adjacent over the opposite side. So we know kind of how to do that problem, or you've seen kind of what to do with that when you were doing your right triangles back then. So we want to be able today to be able to use some of this information in our unit circle to be able to evaluate something. So if I said I want to find the cosine of 60 degrees, I could use my calculator on this, and I could input that into my calculator and say cosine of 60 degrees, and I get 1/2. Now let's think about what we did yesterday when we were working through the problem. Here is my 60-degree angle. So this would make the triangle that would go with 60 degrees. And if we use cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, that would be adjacent is 1/2 divided by 1, which gives me 1/2, which becomes the x value of my coordinate. If I said, what is the sine of 150 degrees? Okay, so I could take my calculator and I could input sine of 150. And I get that is also 1/2. And now if I look at my triangle from yesterday, 150 was here. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse. So 1/2 divided by 1 gives me 1/2, which is the y value. If I said, what is the cosine of, let's say, 90 degrees? So taking my calculator and I put in cosine of 90 degrees, that gives me 0. So if I look at this, while I can't draw a triangle, I can see up here would be what happened with that. It ends up being the x value again. If I took the sine of 240 degrees, so sine of 240, I get a weird number. But if I look at this, so that's going to give me 240. Oh, I didn't use the right one. So that would be here, right? Which we know is negative 1/2 negative square root of 3 over 2. So if I did this and I'm looking at this angle, the opposite of that would be negative square root of 3 over 2. So that would be negative square root of 3 over 2. If I did this problem and I did the square root of 3, the square root of 3 over 2, oops, sorry about that. That gives me the number that I had before. So I would say that is going to give me the y value. So while I can use the opposite over hypotenuse because I have a unit circle, okay, I can replace the hypotenuse with 1. So if I have a unit circle, then the sine is going to be the y value. The cosine is going to be the x value. Now there is another way that I can write tangent, and tangent is sine over cosine. And if I use that method, since sine is y, then I can evaluate this one as y divided by x. When I come over here in unit circle, 1 over sine, so flip sine. So cosecant is going to be 1 over y. Secant flips this one, so 1 over x. And cotangent flips this one, so it becomes x over y. So I can use the unit circle values that I have in order to evaluate these as long as I'm doing a unit circle. So you want to kind of think how things were put together. When we read ordered pairs before, we read ordered pairs as x comma y, alphabetical order. In unit circle, it is the cosine comma sine, which again is in alphabetical order. So cosine values go with the x, sine values go with the y. So what you're going to do today is we're going to kind of take a look at and make a chart of what our values are. So I provided for you a little cheat sheet kind of chart. Tells you how to find degrees, how to find radians, and then sine is y and opposite over hypotenuse. So there is kind of like a schedule of what we just did. Your job today is going to be to fill out this chart. Now, if I was doing the chart, I would kind of put some things together that go together. Like I know that 0 and 180 degrees are going to be related to each other. I know that 90 and 270 are going to be related to each other. So when I start doing the problems, I know that that could just be a sign change. So 0 degrees is 0 radians. And I know this ordered pair is the ordered pair 1, 0. So when I look at this, the y value is 0. The x value is 1. So that's the cosine. The tangent is y divided by x. So 0 divided by 1 is 0. The secant value is 1 over x. So 1 over 1 is 1. The cosecant is 1 over y. So 1 over y, that would be 1 over 0, but I can't do that. So that's going to be undefined. If I take cotangent is the flip of tangent. So flipping 0 becomes 1 over 0. So this one is also undefined. So you don't need to worry about exactly what that means for right now, but you just need to know it's undefined. Okay, and then I could use that bit of information for those. But right now I want to go to like the next set. So if I was doing 30 degrees, so I know 30 is my quadrant 1. That is going to be related to the other pi over 6s at 150, 210, and 330. So all of those are going to have the same numbers that are approaching to it. The only difference is going to be what happens whenever you have your signs. So the ordered pair for this is the square root of 3 over 2, 1/2. This would be pi over 6, 5 pi over 6, 7 pi over 6, and 11 pi over 6. So I'm filling out the chart. I can say, okay, the y value of this is 1/2. So this is 1/2, this is 1/2, and I can take all the way down the column and write 1/2. The x value for this is the square root of 3 over 2. So I can say square root of 3 over 2, square root of 3 over 2, the square root of 3 over 2, the square root of 3 over 2. The tangent value is going to be y divided by x. So when you're doing this, and I have 1/2 divided by the square root of 3 over 2, since the denominators are the same, I don't really need to worry about that. I just need to worry about like the numerators. So this would be 1 over root 3. You could also say this is root 3 over 3, but it doesn't matter. Be able to recognize them both, but 1 over root 3 would work. So 1 over root 3, 1 over root 3, and 1 over root 3. Okay, secant says take your x value and flip it over. So 2 over root 3. Cosecant says take your y value and flip it over. So 2, 2, 2, 2. Cotangent says take your tangent value and flip it. Root 3, root 3, root 3, root 3. Okay, now, everything is based off of quadrant 1. So I know the only difference between quadrant 2, 3, and 4 are going to be the signs. Quadrant 2 is a negative, positive quadrant. So that means that the y's are going to be positive and the x's are negative. So 1/2 is positive, this is negative, positive divided by negative is negative, so tangent is negative. X's are negative, y's are positive, and cotangent is going to be negative. 210 is in a negative, negative quadrant, so both of those are negative. So this is negative, this is negative. Negative divided by negative is positive, so tangent is positive. X is negative, negative, positive. And the last one is in a positive, negative quadrant. So I would have negative y, positive x, negative tangent. Positive x, negative y, negative cotangent. So if I know my first quadrant, then I can find everything else out along the way. You don't need to worry tonight about domain, range, and odd and even. We'll get to that whenever we start doing the graphing part of this. But know that the goal of this would be for me to be able to ask you a question. If you have the sign of 11 pi over 6, what is that answer going to be? So I could look at this chart, 11 pi over 6, here's sine, negative 1/2. What is going to be the tangent of 5 pi over 6? So I look for 5 pi over 6, tangent is here, so you would say negative 1 over root 3. So that's the goal of what we're doing. Right now, if I just get you to list them off, it'll make it a little bit easier for you to find them. Tomorrow, we will be working with finding those values and see if there's a way that we can kind of make our way through what you're doing with that. So you guys have a good evening. All you need to do for today is filling out this chart.